Thank you, Speaker, and colleagues, and thank you for your admonition. I think it's very important that we realize that this is a very emotional debate, but as the seconder to the Conservative Party motion, I want to reiterate how we do hope that the Liberal government will hear the outrage that has been expressed across the country over the transfer of Terri-Lynne McClintic, the killer of 8-year-old Tori Stafford, to a healing lodge in Saskatchewan. Madam Speaker, it's incomprehensible to me that the Liberals would merely order a review in response to this travesty of justice. Madam Speaker, the evidence is pretty clear. McClintic is not eligible for parole until 2031. Since her incarceration, she has not been a model inmate, being convicted of beating up a fellow prisoner and then regretting that she hadn't caused more severe injuries. That is not exactly a model prisoner. So why is she being given a cushy transfer to a healing lodge with no fence? Now, instead of ducking responsibility, this should have been a simple matter of doing what is right. Instead, the Prime Minister and the Minister of Public Safety are hiding behind a bureaucratic memo hastily put together by justice officials. They are failing in their duty to Canadians who are outraged by this transfer. Madam Speaker, I put it to you that they need to step up and reverse this transfer immediately. We know that the Prime Minister is fond of virtue signaling on many issues, but when it comes to standing up for true justice here at home, when it comes to standing up for victims of crime, he chooses instead to mince words or stay silent, and indeed his Public Safety Minister is parroting this same unacceptable approach. The decision to conduct a review of this situation makes no sense when considering the authority of the Minister's office and the office of the Prime Minister, and the authority that they can wield when there is the will to wield it. Clearly, what's required is a firm and immediate directive from the Minister to Corrections Canada to put McClintic back behind bars where she belongs. Madam Speaker, when a Minister of the Crown issues a directive to his or her department, let's be clear. I was there myself. I remember it well, what happens. The wheels are set into motion. So why would the Minister of Public Safety waste time with this review when there is a clear injustice? He could have clearly called to reverse the transfer. He could have done the right thing, but obviously the will is absent. I wonder if the decision not to immediately reverse the McClintic transfer was his alone. I want to know, did the Prime Minister's office weigh in on this? Who is behind this outrageous order not to transfer the inmate? Canadians deserve to know. I'd like to put on before the Chamber the basic facts of the Minister's powers. Under Section 6, Sub 1 of the Corrections and Conditional Release Act, the Minister has the authority to direct the Commissioner of Corrections in all matters, This would include issuing a directive that a broad class of offenders, such as those convicted of the murder of a child, are not eligible for a transfer to a minimum security facility such as this healing lodge. Under Section 96, Sub 6 of the Corrections and Conditional Release Act, the Cabinet could pass regulations setting out the eligibility for minimum security facilities and healing lodges. This could include prohibiting those convicted of murder involving a child. Even in the face of this evidence, Madam Speaker, the Liberals claim that they can't reverse the transfer. But previous public safety ministers have reversed decisions through directives to Corrections Canada. Madam Speaker, when I was in another place, when I served as a member of provincial parliament in the Ontario legislature, the current Liberal Agriculture Minister, who was then the Solicitor General, stopped the transfer of a cop killer after public outrage. That's what happened. That's the precedent that was set in 2000, Madam Speaker. I was a member of the Ontario legislature. We passed a unanimous resolution very similar to the unanimous resolution that the Ontario legislature passed yesterday in the case of McClintic. Back then, when this cop killer was going to be moved to Club Fed, as it was called then, the outrage in Ontario was just the same. A resolution of the Ontario legislature was passed unanimously. PC, NDP, Liberals all passed it. And lo and behold, the Agriculture Minister, who was Solicitor General at the time, found a way to stop the transfer to Club Fed. Another example, Minister Taves ended prison pizza parties. Minister Day mandated that first-degree murderers had to spend a specified time behind bars in maximum security prisons. These were all directives taken during the Harper years. There is clearly precedent for the minister's intervention in the McClintic case. But last Tuesday night, in an interview with CTV, the current public safety minister defended his review of the transfer as the best way to, quote, rectify McClintic's bad practices in the past.
Shame.
Bad practices in the past? That's how you characterize this, Madam Speaker? It's clearly devoid of humanity and reasoning. As I'm sure many in this House will admit, we have employed bad practices from time to time in the course of our lives. Perhaps maybe even the public safety minister himself would admit to as much, but certainly luring an 8-year-old Tori while she was walking home from school and then standing on the lookout while she was violated and then killing her with a hammer and dumping her body is not what most Canadians, the vast majority of Canadians, define as bad practices. And I make no apologies for pointing this fact out. Madam Speaker, the Conservative Party was criticized for describing some of the graphic details of young Tori's murder in the House of Commons last week. In fact, for some media, that seemed to be the bigger story than the outrageous transfer itself. But it is obvious by the Liberals in action that they needed to be reminded of the horrific nature of the crimes committed by McClintic. Governing this vast country of Canada is not always paved with sunny ways, Madam Speaker. There are times when hard truths need to be confronted and addressed, and this Liberal government remains unwilling or incapable of making the hard decisions when the inevitable clouds roll in. Hopefully, I hope, the horrific nature of this crime and the grave injustice of this transfer will lead the Liberal government to change course in this instance. Madam Speaker, I think I speak for many when I say that we ask the Liberals to stand up, to do the right thing, and then perhaps the protest being organized for November 2nd just outside this chamber over the transfer can be avoided. If not, I plan to attend that protest, and I will continue to call out this transfer, and I will continue to denounce the Liberal government for its failure to act. Thank you.